Alright, welcome back everyone. In this video we're gonna discuss an exciting new topic, tensors. Alright, a lot of the undergraduate students are scared. They're scared of tensors. A lot of the undergraduate transport phenomena students are scared of tensors. Well, let me tell you guys something. To be very honest, you don't need a full understanding of tensors to be successful in a transport phenomena undergraduate course. Understanding of tensors will, however, facilitate your understanding of momentum transfer, and I'm gonna show you why. Just give me 1 second. Okay, all right. Now, tensor is like vectors and scalars. Tensor is also a mathematical object. I'm not sure if I'm using the precise terms here, and if some of the math majors are watching this, I apologize in advance. I'm gonna call it a mathematical tool. I think that's a better word. Now, we've used vectors before, right? We have used scalars and vectors before. Scalars just need a magnitude. Vectors need a magnitude and a direction. Now tensor is the next progression in that study. Scalar, vector, tensor. Tensor is the next progression. Let me show you why. Let me show you how. Here I have a simple example. I have a Couette flow problem. Okay, Couette flow is a shear driven flow. We'll talk more about that later. So you can see my coordinates. At y equals 0 I have plate 1, and at y equals 2 and at y equals L, the length L, I have plate 2. Now let's say all of a sudden I start to move plate 2 in the positive x direction. All right, I start moving plate 2. I start pulling it in the positive x direction. What happens to the fluid? And yeah, there's a fluid between these two plates. What happens to the fluid particles at y equals L? Pause the video for a second and think about it. Okay, I'm assuming you guys are back. Now the water molecules like to stick to solid surfaces. They have strong adhesive forces on a molecular level. Water molecules like to stick to solid surfaces, and most fluids like to stick to solid surfaces. The non-slippery fluids like to stick to solid surfaces. This is called the no-slip condition. And this is followed by most fluids. There are, however, slippery fluids, and you have to be aware of those. Okay, not all fluids are going to be non-slip. Not all fluids are going to be no-slip. So when the plate starts moving, the layer of water adjacent is going to start moving. All right, with same momentum, with the same velocity u. What happens to the layer of water below that? Well, since it's a viscous fluid, it's also going to start moving. It's like they're holding hands, and the upper layer starts moving and the lower layer is like, what the hell, I'll start moving too. And same with the layer below. The layer below looks at the upper layer like, yo, I'm gonna start moving too. And this one, and this one, and this one. So you see, in a viscous fluid, the viscosity is responsible for transferring momentum. Viscosity holds these water molecules, these water layers together, and they're like, yo, let's move all together. Okay, that's the intuition. And now, as you can see, there is momentum in the x direction. Let me change that color scheme a little bit. Yeah, this one should be better. There's momentum in the x direction. But you can see that momentum is being transferred. Let me pick a useful color. This should be fine. But you can see that momentum is being transferred in the y direction. As you can see, there's a velocity gradient. As you go from y equals L to y equals 0. So there's a momentum transfer in the y direction. Okay, what have we what can we distill from this? Flow in x, momentum transfer, I'm just going to call that m transfer momentum, not to be confused with mass, in y. Do you see that? All right, so now in order to fully describe this, I need, if I were to follow Newton's law of viscosity, the transfer of momentum in the y direction due to flow in the x direction, if I were to follow Newton's law of viscosity, is proportional to the x component. Let me just write this as u for now, dy. So you see, just to break it down even further, this right here is going to be an element of a tensor matrix. This is going to be an element of a tensor. Y tells you direction of transfer. Y tells you direction of transfer. And x, as you've seen, is the direction of flow. Okay, so we have, in order to fully describe this, in order to fully describe my tau, I need two directions. As you can see, I need two directions. For vectors, I need one direction. For a tensor, in this case, I need two directions. All right, now we're building an intuition. We need magnitude, the direction of flow, and the direction of transfer. All right, we're building up, good. And now, if you are following the textbook Bird, Stewart, and Lightfoot, first edition, in the first chapter, you can find the viscous stress tensor. This right here is the viscous stress tensor. Basically, momentum transfer due to viscosity. Momentum transfer due to viscosity. All right, let's just write that, viscosity. All right, so here you can see I have two directions. I obviously have the magnitude, tau being the magnitude, and I have two subscripts, two directions. All right, and this right here is a second order tensor. This right here is a second order tensor. Why is this a second order tensor? Because you need a magnitude and two directions. All right, you need two spatial directions to fully specify. Two spatial directions needed to specify a component. Okay, I hope this is starting to make some sense now, and you'll only need an understanding of tensors to study momentum transfer, not in heat transfer, not necessarily in mass transfer. This is going to facilitate your learning of momentum transfer. Now, before I conclude this video, let me just close the loop with scalars, vectors, and tensors. So basically, a scalar is actually a zero order tensor. Okay, a scalar is actually a zeroth order tensor because you don't need a direction. You don't need a direction to specify a scalar. What's next? A vector. A vector is a first order tensor. Why is that? Why is vector a first order tensor? Well, you need one direction. You need one arrow. You need one direction. Not to be confused with the band. You need one direction to specify a vector. And zeroth order means no direction needed. And in transport phenomena, you'll be dealing with at most second order tensors that need two directions. Okay, one parallel to the flow, one perpendicular to the flow. All right, this is what you're gonna need. Not even need, this is what's gonna be helpful. Okay, and the example of that, as I showed you above, the viscous momentum flux tensor. All right, I hope this was helpful. So just to give you a recap, a tensor is just a mathematical tool. Like scalars and vectors. It's going to help you understand momentum transfer. It's going to facilitate your learning. Even if you don't have a good understanding of tensors, you can still do well in an undergraduate transport phenomena class. I went over, sorry, English is not my first language. I went over the Couette flow problem. We talked about how there is flow in the x direction, but there is transfer of momentum, as you can see, in the y direction. So the transfer of momentum is perpendicular to the direction of flow, and this is captured by Newton's law of viscosity. Let me just write it here. Newton's law of viscosity. Okay. All right. And yeah, you need a direction of transfer and you need a direction of flow. You're done. All right. So yeah, this is our viscous stress tensor as shown in the first chapter of Bird, Stewart, and Lightfoot. And here, as you can see, you need two directions. One direction for flow and the other one for transfer of momentum. Just to note, these diagonal terms, both directions are same. If both directions are same, they're known as normal. They're sometimes referred to as normal stresses. We'll talk more about that hopefully in the later videos. Alright guys, and yeah, tensor, scalars and vectors actually belong to the bigger family of tensors. Scalar is a zeroth order tensor, vector is a first order tensor. And yeah, second order tensors is what you're going to be playing around. Well, you're going to be playing around not that much, and this is what's going to pop up in a transport phenomena undergraduate level class. Alright, thank you very much guys. I hope this was helpful.